My name is Janice. I'm 62 years old. I live in a modest house just outside Asheville, North Carolina. The kind with a creaky porch and a bird feeder that attracts more squirrels than birds. I've lived here for nearly 3 decades. It's quiet. Sometimes too quiet. But I've learned to appreciate silence more than I ever thought I would. I was married once. For 22 years. His name was Gerald, though I stopped calling him that when he left. I called him for a while. Then I stopped referring to him altogether. We had one daughter, Amanda. She's 34 now. Lives in Raleigh with her husband, 2 golden retrievers, and a career she rarely talks about on the phone. I also have a sister, Evelyn. She's 6 years younger than me and always reminded me of it, especially when we were growing up. Where I was quiet and responsible, she was loud and charming. While I raised Amanda, cooked dinners, paid bills, and sat through parent-teacher nights alone, Evelyn flew to Napa and Cabo and Paris with a string of men who all looked the same after a while. The only constants in her life were her 2 children, Olivia and Max. My niece and nephew, now 17 and 12. I love those kids. I always have. I was there for both births. I was the one who sat in the hospital room when Evelyn had a scare with Max. I was the one who helped Olivia learn to drive when Evelyn was too busy falling in and out of love. I've done school pickups, packed lunches, paid for summer camp when Evelyn's card mysteriously declined. No one asked me to, but I did it anyway. Family is family. That's how I was raised. My parents are long gone. Cancer took my father. A stroke took my mother 2 years later. There's no one left to remind Evelyn what right and wrong used to look like in our house. I try not to be bitter about it, but sometimes it creeps in. Amanda and I used to be close. She was a quiet child like me, thoughtful, always reading. When Gerald left, Amanda was 16. She didn't cry. She didn't yell. She just got very quiet. I think it did something to her. I tried to be everything he wasn't. Present. Steady. But the damage was already done. She left for college and never really came back, not emotionally anyway. She visits for the holidays. Sometimes. Evelyn was always better at staying in Amanda's orbit. She bought her things, took her to lunch, let her talk about things I never understood like podcasts and apps and something called emotional branding. I didn't mind. I was happy Amanda had another woman to talk to, even if it stung a little. 3 months ago, Evelyn called me. Her voice was cheerful, syrupy even. That always meant she wanted something. Jan, she said, I've been meaning to ask you something for weeks now. You're going to say yes, I know it. I sat in my sunroom with a cup of coffee. I hadn't even gotten my slippers on yet. I need a little favor. Just a week. Maybe 10 days, tops. I waited. She sighed dramatically. I'm going on a little trip. With someone. And I need you to stay at the house with the kids. You know how Max gets when Olivia's left in charge. Where are you going? She laughed. Oh, Mexico. Tulum, actually. You'd love it. Beaches. Sunday fresh fruit. You should come sometime. I didn't answer. That's why I'm asking you. Because I trust you. And the kids adore you. I said I'd think about it. Later that day, I got a call from Amanda. Mom, she said, Aunt Evelyn told me she asked you to babysit. I'm considering it, I said. Silence. I think you should know something. That's when she told me. Evelyn wasn't just going on a trip. She was going on a romantic getaway. With someone she'd been seeing off and on for the past year. That someone was Gerald, my ex-husband. I felt the blood drain from my face. I put the phone down. I walked to the sink. Washed the same coffee mug 3 times. Amanda stayed on the line. She didn't say anything for a minute. I didn't want you to hear it from her, she finally said. I nodded, though she couldn't see me. She said it's casual. That you're over him anyway. That it's not a big deal. That last part made me laugh. Not because it was funny. Because it was cruel. Careless. After I hung up, I sat down and stared at the wall for nearly 2 hours. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there. I kept thinking about the way Evelyn used to come over for coffee, used to ask about that old heart of yours. I thought about the time she looked me in the eye and said, I never understood what you saw in Gerald. Now I knew. She was watching all along. I told myself maybe Amanda got it wrong. Maybe it was someone else. Maybe she meant another man. But the next day, Evelyn texted me a photo. It was a picture of a beach. 2 drinks in the sand. 2 sets of footprints. No faces. But I knew those legs. I knew that blue linen shirt. I had bought it myself. For our 20th anniversary. Evelyn followed up with a winking emoji. I didn't answer. I didn't call. I didn't scream or ask why. I just sat with it. That night, Olivia called me. Aunt Jan, are you still coming? I hope so. I don't want to be stuck here with Max and his 4-night obsession. Her voice was bright. Innocent. I said I'd be there. The next week I packed a bag and drove to Evelyn's house. She met me at the door. Sunglasses on her head. Lips freshly glossed. Her nails were still drying when she handed me the spare key. You're a lifesaver, she said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. She wore the same perfume I once loved. Now it smelled like betrayal. As she wheeled her suitcase out the door, she turned and smiled. I'll call you from the beach. Don't wait up. I stood there, holding the key, watching the car pull away. Max ran past me shouting something about pizza rolls. Olivia followed him, already FaceTiming a friend. The house smelled like lavender and lemon. I looked around. Photos lined the walls. Smiling faces. Vacations. Birthday parties. There were even photos of Gerald. None of me. Not one. I sat on the couch and took a deep breath. I thought about everything I'd done for this family. Every time I'd said yes when I should have said no. Then I looked around the house again. And that's when I knew. They had no idea who they'd just handed the keys to. The first night at Evelyn's house, I barely slept. I lay in her guest room, surrounded by pale blue walls and furniture that looked like it had never been touched. The kind you buy to impress guests, not to live in. Outside the door, I could hear Max's video game buzzing well past midnight. Olivia had a long phone call in the hallway, whispering and giggling. I let them be. I was too busy thinking. It wasn't just that Evelyn had taken Gerald. That would have been enough. It was how easily she did it. How she had looked me in the eye and handed me a house key. As if this arrangement was some kind of favor to me. As if she was the one being generous. I thought about all the birthdays I'd planned for her kids when she forgot. The emergency dentist appointments. The school dances. The time Olivia got her first period at my house and cried on my lap for 2 hours. Evelyn never even brought it up later. She was in Florida with some man named Dale. Or maybe it was Travis. I never told her how much I gave. I just gave it. That was my mistake. The next morning I made pancakes. Max barely looked up from his tablet. Olivia said she wasn't eating carbs this week. I smiled and washed the dishes in silence. For 3 days I kept the house running. Groceries. Homework. Dinners. Clean laundry. I even helped Max with a science project he said he'd already finished. He hadn't even started. Evelyn hadn't checked. She never did. And all the while I kept thinking. There was no one in this house who knew what I had given up in my life. No one who remembered the woman I used to be before I was a wife, a mother, a sister, a fallback. I had dreams once. Not extravagant ones. I wanted to own a small flower shop. I liked arranging things, making something beautiful out of what others overlooked. Instead, I raised a child mostly alone. I stayed in a marriage far too long. I stood still so everyone else could run free. And Evelyn? She never had to grow up. She called it charm. I called it irresponsibility. But no one asked me. On the 4th day, Olivia knocked on my door. Can you drive me to Haley's? She asked. Mom always lets me. I looked at her. She had Evelyn's eyes, but softer. Not yet hardened by life. What's at Haley's? Her parents are gone this weekend.
Just a sleepover.
Nothing wild. I paused. I'll take you, I said, but I'd like to meet her parents first. She rolled her eyes, but she said okay. That afternoon, I pulled up to Haley's house. A big, modern place with glass windows and an expensive car out front. I rang the bell. No one answered. I waited. Then I walked back to the car and looked at Olivia. No parents home? She shrugged. I drove her back to Evelyn's. No sleepover tonight, I said. You're staying here. She stormed off to her room, slammed the door. Max didn't notice. He was still on his screen. That night, I sat alone in the backyard. It was chilly. I wrapped myself in Evelyn's throw blanket and watched the sky turn from deep purple to black. I thought about Amanda. We hadn't spoken since she told me about the trip. She hadn't asked how I was holding up. She hadn't even called to check in. She probably assumed I'd do what I always did.
Smile.
Swallow it.
Keep the peace.
But something in me had shifted. This wasn't just about Gerald, or Evelyn, or even Amanda.
It was about me.
And the quiet way I had let everyone treat me like the spare. That's when I made my decision. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't fight. I wouldn't tell the children anything cruel. But I was going to remind them exactly who I was. And what happens when you hand the keys to the wrong woman. The next morning I started. I cooked breakfast. A full spread. Bacon.
Eggs.
Waffles. Fruit.
Juice. Coffee.
The works. Max blinked in surprise. Olivia looked suspicious. I smiled. We're going to try something new today, I said. A little week of old-fashioned rules. Like I grew up with. Max groaned. Olivia narrowed her eyes. No phones during meals. No screens after 8. No junk food unless you bake it yourself. You'll each do your own laundry this week. And we'll be doing evening walks before bedtime. You're not our mom, Olivia said. No, I replied. I'm not. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't argue. I simply collected their devices and set them in a basket on the mantel. Olivia tried to take hers back. Try me, I said quietly.
She stopped.
Max cried that night when the Wi-Fi went down. I had unplugged it and wrapped the cord in tinfoil, tucked it in my suitcase. I taught Olivia how to make bread. She rolled her eyes at first. Then she asked if she could add cinnamon. I let her. Max read a book for the first time in what looked like years. It was slow, painful, but he finished a chapter. I didn't praise him. I simply nodded and said, "Good." We went on walks. They complained the first few nights. Then Olivia started pointing out birds. Max kicked a rock the whole way home. By the 5th day, Olivia asked if we could cook again. Max asked if we could bake cookies. From scratch. I said yes. I didn't speak to Evelyn during the entire trip. Not once. She sent photos of sunsets. Of fruit bowls. Of Gerald's hand on her leg. I didn't reply. I didn't even open the messages. She called on the 7th night. I let it ring. Then I took her kids out for ice cream. Real ice cream. With sprinkles. We sat on a park bench. Olivia smiled without her phone. Max leaned his head on my shoulder. I looked at both of them and thought about how different this could have been. How simple love could be when it was steady, reliable,
real.
Later that night, I opened Evelyn's messages. I replied with just one sentence. The house is fine. The children are learning who I am. I knew it would unsettle her, but I didn't care. This wasn't about revenge. It was about remembrance. And I was just getting started. Evelyn came back on a Sunday. It was late afternoon. She didn't text ahead. Just pulled up in a rental car with sunglasses on her head and that same pink lipstick she always wore when she wanted something. Gerald stepped out from the passenger side. I hadn't seen him in years. He looked smaller. Not in body, but in presence. Like someone who used to cast a long shadow but now disappeared in the light. He didn't meet my eyes. That told me everything I needed to know. Evelyn kissed the air beside my cheek. Kids were angels, I'm sure, she said. I nodded once. Max ran out and hugged her. Olivia stayed on the porch. She looked at me before going to her mother. There was something quiet in her expression. Thoughtful. They'd changed. Not drastically, but enough. I started packing my things. Evelyn followed me upstairs. You didn't call once, she said. Not even to ask if we were safe. I assumed you were where you wanted to be, I said, folding my clothes. She leaned against the doorframe. Well, she said, stretching, I hope they didn't give you too much trouble. I zipped my bag and looked at her. No trouble. I just made a few adjustments. Taught them how to sit with quiet, how to read labels, how to sew a button, how to ask questions, and how to say thank you. She narrowed her eyes. What does that mean? I smiled gently. It means they're learning the kind of things you forgot to teach them. Her lips tightened. I could see the words rising in her throat, but she didn't say them. Downstairs, Gerald waited by the front door. Olivia was telling him about the walks, about how she made banana bread. His eyes flicked up to mine. Then he looked away again. I'm going now, I said. Let me walk you out, Olivia offered. We stepped onto the porch. She had her arms crossed, jacket barely zipped. Thanks for staying, she said. Of course. She hesitated. Then, Mom said you were angry about her trip. I looked at her. What do you think? She bit her lip. I think she doesn't care how people feel if she's getting what she wants. I raised an eyebrow. You didn't hear that from me, she added. I smiled. She hugged me then. A real hug, not the polite kind. You can come stay anytime, she said. That surprised me. Then I drove home. The house felt different. Still mine, but smaller somehow. Like I had left part of myself behind in Evelyn's kitchen. The next morning, I made a list. I didn't write it down. I just repeated it to myself while I stirred oatmeal and brewed coffee. No more babysitting. No more emotional dumping ground. No more silence in the face of disrespect. I called my attorney that afternoon. Nothing dramatic. Just some updates to my will. A few adjustments to my power of attorney. Some long overdue boundaries placed around my estate. Amanda had always assumed she'd handle things when I was gone. Evelyn probably thought she'd be mentioned in passing. I made sure they'd be clear about what I valued and who I trusted. That same week, I started volunteering again. There's a small nonprofit downtown that teaches life skills to teenage girls. I had worked with them before Gerald left. I stopped during the divorce, then never went back. This time, I walked through the door like I belonged. They remembered me. I started with one class a week. Budgeting. Cooking basics. How to write a professional email. Then they asked if I could teach sewing. I dusted off my old machine and said yes. The girls were lively, messy, funny. Some had eyes like Olivia's, tired in a way that didn't match their age. I taught them what I had taught Evelyn's kids that week. How to care. And how to carry yourself when no one thanks you. The silence from Evelyn stretched for almost a month. Then she sent me an invitation. A party. Her birthday. 56. It was engraved on gold-trimmed stationery, as if we still lived in a world where class could be printed.
I didn't RSVP.
Amanda called the next day. Mom, she said. You got the invite, right? I did. You're not coming?
No. Pause.
She said you're being childish. I laughed.
No, Amanda.
I've just decided not to attend performances where the script hasn't changed. Amanda was quiet. Then, I think Olivia misses you. She has my number. I didn't mean it harshly. Just honest. 3 days before the party, Evelyn called. No text this time. A real call. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was short. I don't know what you're trying to prove, but the kids have been weird since you stayed here. If you're going to poison them against me, at least have the guts to say it to my face. I didn't reply. Instead, I sent Olivia a book. A hardbound copy of A Tree Grows in Brooklyn, with a note inside. To the girl who asks better questions than most adults. Don't lose that. A week later, I got a thank you card.
Real handwriting.
No emojis. That weekend, I hosted a small dinner. Just 3 women from the nonprofit and 2 of my neighbors. We sat in the backyard under string lights. We talked about quiet things.
Aging.
Invisibility. And the power of being underestimated. Evelyn had posted pictures from her party. A champagne tower. Gerald beside her, wearing that old linen shirt again. Her smile stretched a little too wide. Olivia wasn't in any of the photos. Neither was Max. They were home, apparently. Too tired, Evelyn wrote. I smiled. The next time Amanda called, she was softer. I read your letter, she said. What letter? The one you left with the lawyer. They sent it to me for review.
Ah.
I had written a letter to accompany my will. Just a few pages. Explaining my choices. My values. Who I was before anyone needed me. You think I've failed you, Amanda said. I think you forgot me, I answered. She didn't deny it.
You were always just there, she said.
I never thought about what that cost you. I let her words sit. I don't expect anything, I said. But I also won't apologize for waking up. There was a long pause. I'm sorry, she said. This time, I believed her. We talked for another 10 minutes. She asked about the girls in my class. I told her one of them was trying to sew her own prom dress. Amanda laughed. That's brave. No braver than a woman walking away from being invisible. She got quiet again. I'd like to come visit, she said. You can, I said. But only if it's because you want to see me. Not because you feel guilty. She agreed. The next week, a card arrived from Max. It was sloppy. Misspelled. But it made me smile. Thanks for teaching me to cook eggs. I made some for Mom. She said they were perfect. She didn't even know I could do that. Sometimes, that's all it takes. A single moment. A small shift. Not for revenge. Not for applause. But for clarity. And that's when I knew. I hadn't just taught Evelyn's kids a lesson. I had finally remembered who I was. I live quieter now. Mornings begin the same way each day. Coffee at 6. A walk around the block. Sometimes the air is still cool enough to wear a shawl. Sometimes I just carry it, wrapped around my arms like a memory. There's peace in repetition. There's healing in stillness. I sold my larger house last spring. Too many rooms I didn't need. Too many things that held voices from the past. I bought a small cottage on the edge of town. 1 bedroom. A garden. And a wide front porch that catches the evening light. I grow herbs and tomatoes now. Nothing extravagant. Just enough to remind myself that care brings reward, even when no one is watching. Olivia comes by sometimes. She doesn't always warn me. I'll hear the creak of the gate and find her leaning against the railing, wearing headphones and pretending she's not waiting for me to notice. I always do. She's 17 now. Taller. A little more guarded. But there's still that quiet thoughtfulness in her. She asks me things no one else thinks to ask. What was the hardest thing about being a mom? What did you want before you had Amanda? Do you think people can really change? We don't always have answers. Sometimes we just sit. She helps me pull weeds. We bake in silence. I don't try to parent her. I'm not her mother. But I see the cracks in her foundation. The questions in her eyes. I do what I can to help her build something stronger. Last month, she told me she wanted to learn how to drive. Evelyn had promised to teach her, but kept canceling. So I took her out. Empty parking lots first. Then the back roads near the farms. She stalled once. Panicked. But she started again. You're more patient than Mom, she said. I smiled. I've had more time to learn. Max sends me little drawings in the mail. Mostly dinosaurs or robots. I put them on the fridge. I don't hear from Gerald. I don't want to. Amanda visits every other month. She brings flowers and pastries from the city. She walks slower now. As if she finally realized I'm not as unshakable as she once believed. We talk about small things first. Then deeper ones. She told me once that she thought I would always be waiting in the background. That she thought I didn't mind. I did mind, I said. I just didn't think anyone would care if I said so. She cried when I said that. Not loud. Just soft tears that came from someplace old. I forgave her a long time ago. But it took her time to forgive herself. Evelyn, and I don't speak often. A text here and there. Holidays. Polite. Formal. She hasn't apologized. Not really. She's not built for that. She says things like, we were both going through a lot, or you took it harder than I expected. I let her say what she needs to say. I know the truth. What she did wasn't just selfish. It was cruel. But it also woke something in me I had let sleep for too long. A sense of self. A boundary. A backbone. I don't regret what I taught her children. And I don't regret walking away from the woman who once called me her best friend, only to treat me like a footnote in her story. Now my story is my own. There's a small bookshelf in my living room. On it sits a photo of me holding Amanda when she was a baby. Next to it, a framed quote. "You do not have to set yourself on fire to keep others warm." I read that once in a waiting room. It stayed with me. I still give. I still help. But only when I choose to. Not because I feel I must. Not because someone assumed I would. And that has made all the difference. My life is smaller now. But it's full. Full of small dinners. Long walks. Books that keep me company. People who see me. Really see me. Sometimes I think back to that week in Evelyn's house. To the kids with their eyes glued to screens, their voices short, their hearts half asleep. I wonder what would have happened if I had stayed silent. If I had just done what was expected. Again. But I didn't. I took a stand. Not with anger. Not with revenge. But with presence. With quiet authority. With the kind of love that doesn't excuse harm just because it wears a familiar face. If you're reading this, and you've been the one holding everything together, if you've kept your pain quiet so others could stay comfortable, if you've ever been left behind by the very people you loved the most, I hope you remember this. You are allowed to say no. You are allowed to change your mind. You are allowed to choose peace, even if it means letting go of those who never gave it to you. And you are allowed to reclaim your name. If this story resonated with you, please share where you're watching from and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this.